My name is Olivia Thompson. I'm 32 years old and a single mother to my beautiful 5-year-old daughter, Lily. When the ivory envelope arrived with Victoria's wedding invitation, my stomach twisted into knots. My perfect sister marrying her perfect fiancé in what would undoubtedly be the perfect ceremony. I hadn't spoken to Victoria or my mother Eleanor in months, their judgment about my life choices becoming too much to bear. After Michael walked out on us 3 years ago, I promised myself I'd never put Lily in situations where she might feel unwanted. Yet here I was, considering attending a wedding where I knew we'd both be treated like second-class citizens. Before I dive into what happened at my sister's wedding, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, and if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics, resilience, and unexpected moments of justice. Trust me, what happened after my sister's cruel joke is something you won't want to miss. Growing up as Victoria's younger sister meant living in a perpetual shadow. From our earliest years, the contrast between us was stark and continuously reinforced by our parents, especially our mother Eleanor. Victoria excelled at everything without seeming to try, straight A student, cheerleading captain, prom queen. I was the awkward one, creative but quiet, never quite meeting the standards Victoria so effortlessly set. I remember my 10th birthday when my parents gave Victoria a new bike, not because it was her birthday, but because she had won first place in the regional spelling bee. My own gift that year was a set of watercolor paints from the discount store. When I showed excitement about them, my mother remarked, "At least you're grateful for small things. That will serve you well in life." School events were particularly painful. When I earned second place in an art competition in 7th grade, my father's response was, "Not bad, but Victoria always took first." At Victoria's piano recitals, they brought flowers and took the family out for dinner afterward. For my art exhibitions, they'd arrive late and leave early, often with Victoria in tow, complaining of boredom. Victoria wasn't just content with our parents' favoritism, she actively cultivated it. If I received any praise, she would immediately bring up one of her own accomplishments or find a way to diminish mine. When I was accepted to State University on a partial art scholarship, Victoria, already attending an Ivy League school, told everyone at our family Easter gathering that community colleges have really lowered their standards. Our diverging paths continued into adulthood. Victoria graduated with honors, secured a position at a prestigious marketing firm, and dated a series of successful, handsome men who met our parents' exacting standards. Meanwhile, I studied graphic design, finding joy in creating visual stories that spoke to people. I met Michael during my junior year of college. He wasn't a type my parents would approve of. He had tattoos and played bass in a local band while studying sound engineering. But he made me laugh, appreciated my art, and for the first time, I felt truly seen by someone. Our relationship progressed quickly, and when I discovered I was pregnant in our senior year, Michael surprised me by seeming excited rather than dismayed. "We'll figure it out together," he'd promised, holding my hands as I cried with a mixture of fear and unexpected happiness. My family's reaction was exactly what I'd expected. My mother cried as though I'd died rather than created life. My father sat silently, disappointment etched across his face. Victoria, who had just been promoted at work, took the opportunity to lecture me about responsibility and timing. "You've always been impulsive, Olivia," she said, examining her manicured nails. "But this really takes the cake. What about your career? Or did you even have plans for one?" Despite their reactions, Michael and I got married in a small ceremony with just a few friends present. My family attended out of obligation, my mother telling everyone it was a rushed affair due to circumstances. Victoria wore white, despite the tradition that only brides should do so. The first year with Lily was magical despite the challenges. Michael worked hard at the recording studio, and I took on freelance graphic design projects I could do from home while caring for our daughter. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy, at least I thought we were. The changes in Michael were subtle at first. Late nights at the studio became more frequent. He became irritable when Lily cried. Our conversations grew shorter, our intimacy rare. By the time Lily turned 2, Michael was essentially a visitor in our home, stopping by to sleep and shower before disappearing again. When I finally confronted him, his response shattered my world. "I never wanted this life, Olivia. I wasn't ready to be a father." Just like that, he was gone, leaving behind his wedding ring and a child he'd helped create. The divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later, along with a minimal child support agreement that he would later repeatedly fail to honor. My family's response to Michael's abandonment was not the support I desperately needed. Instead, there was a persistent undercurrent of "I told you so" in every conversation. My mother suggested I'd driven him away by being too demanding, while Victoria openly told cousins at a family reunion that I'd trapped him with a pregnancy, a cruel fiction that ignored that Michael and I had been in a committed relationship. Despite everything, I rebuilt my life around Lily, who became my center of gravity. I expanded my freelance design business into a small but steady career, creating logos and marketing materials for local businesses. I found an affordable 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood with a decent elementary school. Every milestone Lily reached, first words, first steps, first day of preschool, was a reminder that I was doing something right, despite what my family thought of me. Our contact with my family dwindled to obligatory holiday phone calls and occasional Sunday dinners where my mother would inspect Lily for signs of proper upbringing and invariably find me lacking. Victoria, who had been steadily climbing the corporate ladder, rarely attended these gatherings, but when she did, she made sure to highlight the contrast between our lives. Her business trips to Europe against my trips to the local park, her designer wardrobe against my practical clothing bought on sale. For Lily's sake, I maintained these tenuous family connections, wanting her to know her grandparents and aunt despite their flaws. I told myself that limited exposure to their judgment was better than cutting them off completely. Maybe one day they would see us, really see us, and realize that our life, though different from what they had envisioned for me, was valid and worthy of respect. That fragile hope was put to the test when Victoria's wedding invitation arrived, forcing me to decide whether to subject Lily and myself to what would undoubtedly be a showcase for family dynamics at their worst. Victoria's engagement to Nathan Phillips was announced with the fanfare usually reserved for royal weddings. She'd met him at work. He was a client, the CEO of a successful tech company that had hired her firm for rebranding. Their courtship had been swift and, according to my mother's breathless phone calls, absolutely perfect. The 3-carat diamond ring on Victoria's finger was immediately showcased on social media, along with professional engagement photos that looked straight out of a magazine. Wedding planning consumed the next 6 months of my family's life, with my mother and Victoria forming an impenetrable bubble of venue visits, menu tastings, and floral arrangements. I learned about most developments through my mother's social media posts or the occasional text message informing me of decisions already made. When the topic of bridesmaids arose, I braced myself for the obligatory ask. In our extended family, sisters always stood for each other at weddings. Even cousins who openly disliked each other honored this tradition. My preparation for polite acceptance was unnecessary, however, as the ask never came. Victoria feels that since your lifestyles are so different now, it might be awkward to have you in the bridal party, my mother explained during one of our rare phone conversations. She's chosen friends who understand her daily life. You understand, don't you, dear? I swallowed my hurt, reminding myself this was Victoria's day. Of course. Whatever makes her happy. Despite being excluded from the bridal party, I received reluctant invitations to participate in pre-wedding activities. The first was a shopping trip to find outfits for the wedding weekend. My mother insisted I needed appropriate attire and offered to help me select something, her tone suggesting she didn't trust my judgment. The shopping expedition was an exercise in humiliation. Victoria and my mother exchanged glances when I checked price tags before trying anything on. When I emerged from the dressing room in a navy blue dress that I thought looked rather nice, Victoria tilted her head critically. "That color washes you out completely," she said. "And it does nothing to hide your mom pooch." My mother nodded in agreement. "Have you considered shapewear, dear? It works wonders for problem areas." I bought the dress anyway, partly because it was one of the few in my budget and partly out of defiance. If they were determined to see me as the disheveled single mom, I wouldn't waste energy trying to change their perception. The rehearsal dinner provided my first real opportunity to meet Nathan. Victoria had kept him strangely separate from family gatherings, as though reluctant to share this prize she'd acquired. My first impression of him was surprisingly positive. Tall with kind eyes and an easy smile, he seemed more down-to-earth than I'd expected based on Victoria's description of his business successes. More surprising was his immediate interest in Lily, who I'd brought along since my regular sitter was unavailable. "So you're the famous Lily," he said, crouching down to her level. "Your Aunt Victoria has told me you're quite the artist." Victoria had never seen Lily's artwork, nor had she ever expressed interest in her niece's talents. I caught a flash of annoyance crossing her face as Nathan continued chatting with Lily about her favorite colors and subjects to draw. "Nathan, the Hendersons just arrived," Victoria interrupted, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "You must come meet them. They're potential investors." As they walked away, I caught Nathan glancing back at us with what looked like genuine regret at the interrupted conversation. The final dress fitting for the wedding turned into another opportunity for criticism. Though I wasn't in the bridal party, my mother insisted I attend to provide moral support for Victoria. "Turn sideways, Olivia," Victoria instructed as I tried on my purchased dress for their approval. "See how the fabric pulls across your stomach? That's what I was talking about before." "She's right, dear," my mother added. "Perhaps we should look for something with more structure. Victoria's wedding photos will be in our family albums forever." The one bright spot in all the wedding preparations was Lily's excitement about being a flower girl. Despite Victoria's initial reluctance to include her, my mother had insisted on the tradition of having the youngest family member participate. Lily took her responsibility with adorable seriousness, practicing walking slowly and dropping rose petals with careful precision in our living room. During her fitting for the flower girl dress, even Victoria had to admit she looked charming. "She'll do fine as long as she follows instructions exactly," she said, which from Victoria was practically effusive praise. As the wedding day approached, my determination to maintain dignity hardened into a kind of armor. I would attend, I would smile, I would play my part in the family tableau, and I would focus on making the experience positive for Lily. Whatever slights came my way, I would absorb them quietly and save my reactions for the privacy of our apartment afterward. This wasn't about me. It was about not allowing my daughter to become collateral damage in the ongoing Cold War with my family. What I couldn't have anticipated was just how tested that resolution would be, or how the day would ultimately unfold in ways none of us could have predicted. I woke before my alarm on Victoria's wedding day, my stomach already tight with anxiety. The pale morning light filtered through my blinds as I lay there, mentally rehearsing how to navigate the day ahead. Beside me, Lily slept peacefully, her small hand curled near her face, unaware of the emotional minefield we would be walking into. By the time Lily woke, I had already showered, applied makeup with extra care, and arranged my hair in a style that I hoped looked effortlessly elegant rather than trying too hard. Lily bounced out of bed, immediately asking if it was Princess Day, yet her nickname for the wedding. "Yes, sweetie, it's Princess Day," I said, helping her into the bathroom to brush her teeth. "And you're going to be the prettiest flower girl ever." Dressing Lily in her flower girl outfit became a special moment between us. The dress, a confection of ivory tulle with a blush pink sash, transformed my energetic 5-year-old into a picture of innocence. As I carefully braided small roses into her honey blonde hair, she held perfectly still, understanding the importance of looking just right. "Mommy, will Aunt Victoria be happy when she sees me?" Lily asked as I secured the final rose. "She'll be very happy," I assured her, though I wasn't entirely convinced. "Everyone will think you look beautiful." We arrived at the upscale hotel venue an hour earlier than requested. I'd promised to help with last-minute preparations, partly out of familial duty and partly hoping that being useful might shield me from criticism. Lily clutched her small basket of rose petals as we made our way to the bridal suite, her face solemn with responsibility. Victoria was already in full preparation mode, surrounded by bridesmaids, makeup artists, and our mother, who was alternating between taking photos and offering unsolicited advice. When we entered, Victoria glanced up from the stylist working on her hair. "You're early," she said, her tone making it clear this wasn't necessarily a virtue. "And Lily's hair is already done. It was supposed to be styled with the rest of the bridal party." "I thought I'd save time by doing it at home," I explained. "The roses match her sash exactly." Victoria studied Lily for a moment. "It's not how I envisioned it, but I suppose it will do." "Mother, doesn't Lily's hair look a bit homemade?" Eleanor peered at her granddaughter critically. "It's charming in a rustic way," she said, which was her coded language for inadequate. "Maybe Janine can add some more polish when she finishes with a bridesmaid's hair." While Victoria was whisked away for makeup, I tried to make myself useful, organizing gift bags for the bridesmaids and steaming a wrinkle out of my mother's dress. Eleanor fussed over Victoria constantly, adjusting her veil, dabbing tears when the makeup artist revealed Victoria's bridal glow, and reminiscing about her own wedding day. My offers of help were acknowledged with distracted nods or redirected to less significant tasks. As more family members arrived for pre-ceremony photos, I found myself fielding increasingly uncomfortable questions about my personal life. "Still no man in the picture?" asked Aunt Patricia, eyeing me over her champagne glass. "You know, my neighbor's son just got divorced. No children of his own, but he's great with kids. Very successful in commercial real estate." "I'm focusing on Lily and my design business right now," I replied, the practiced response rolling off my tongue easily after 3 years of similar inquiries. Uncle Robert was less subtle. "Shame about what happened with Michael. Always thought he seemed flighty. You should have listened to your mother about him from the start." On my way to the bathroom for a moment of peace, I overheard Victoria talking with her bridesmaids in a side room, the door slightly ajar. "Can you believe what she's wearing?" Victoria's voice carried clearly. "It looks like something off a clearance rack." "At least she made an effort," another voice responded. "Remember Jennifer's sister at her wedding? Full-on gothic makeup and a nose ring." "Honestly, I'm just glad Olivia lost some of the baby weight," Victoria continued. "In the Christmas photos last year, she looked like she was still pregnant. Nathan's family is big on appearances, and I don't need them wondering about my genetics." Laughter followed, along with more comments that I forced myself to walk away from. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my wrists and took deep breaths, fighting back tears that would ruin the makeup I'd applied so carefully. A gentle knock on the door interrupted my moment of distress. "Just a minute," I called, quickly dabbing my face dry. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with an elegant older woman who bore a striking resemblance to Nathan. "You must be Olivia," she said warmly. "I'm Barbara, Nathan's mother. I've been hoping to meet you." Surprised by her friendly tone, I shook her extended hand. "It's nice to meet you too. I just met your delightful daughter," Barbara continued. She showed me how carefully she can sprinkle her flower petals. Such a conscientious little girl. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched by her observation. "Lily takes her flower girl duties very seriously." "As she should," Barbara nodded approvingly. "In my opinion, the flower girl has one of the most important jobs. She sets the tone for the bride's entrance." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Between us, I think she'll upstage everyone with those rosy cheeks and careful steps." Our conversation was brief, but restorative, like a cool drink on a hot day. Barbara's kindness, offered without agenda or comparison, made me realize how starved I'd been for simple human warmth from my family. As the ceremony time approached and guests began to arrive, I experienced a sudden, overwhelming urge to leave. I could claim Lily wasn't feeling well. We could be home within an hour, safe from judgment and comparison. The temptation was so strong that I found myself calculating the quickest route to the parking garage. Instead, I found myself in front of a large mirror in a quiet corner of the venue. My reflection showed a woman in a carefully chosen dress, hair arranged neatly, makeup subtle but flattering. But it was my eyes that caught my attention, tired, wary, already anticipating hurt. "Not today," I whispered to my reflection. Today, you hold your head high. Not for them, but for her. In my mind's eye, I saw Lily, proudly clutching her basket of petals. As if summoned by my thoughts, Lily appeared at my side, her face alight with excitement. Mommy, they're ready for me to line up. The wedding's starting. Her joy was so pure, so untouched by the undercurrents of family tension, that it acted like a shield around my heart. Let's go then, flower princess, I said, taking her small hand in mine. It's showtime. The ceremony was undeniably beautiful. Victoria had spared no expense transforming the hotel's garden terrace into a fairy tale setting, with white roses and hydrangeas adorning every surface, crystal chandeliers suspended from the pergola, and a white carpet runner sprinkled with rose petals leading to an ornate floral arch where Nathan waited. I sat in the fifth row, close enough to be recognized as family, but far enough to indicate my peripheral status. As the string quartet began playing Pachelbel's canon, the procession started. Victoria's 6 bridesmaids glided down the aisle in identical blush gowns, followed by her maid of honor, her best friend since college. Then came Lily's moment. Standing at the entrance, clutching her basket with a look of intense concentration, she waited for her cue. When it came, she began her careful walk, dropping rose petals in measured amounts just as she'd practiced. A collective awe rose from the guests, and I felt a surge of pride so powerful it brought tears to my eyes. Victoria's entrance on our father's arm was a vision in designer white, her dress a masterpiece of lace and crystal beading that caught the afternoon sun. Despite our complicated relationship, I found myself moved by the sight of my sister as a bride. For a brief moment, I remembered us as children, playing wedding with pillowcases as veils, before competition and comparison had created such distance between us. The ceremony itself was traditional and mercifully brief. When Nathan and Victoria exchanged vows, his voice carried clearly across the garden, steady and sincere as he promised to cherish her. Victoria's voice, by contrast, wavered with emotion that seemed genuine, offering a glimpse of vulnerability I rarely saw in my confident sister. After the pronouncement and kiss, the newlyweds walked back down the aisle to applause. Nathan caught my eye as they passed and gave me a warm smile and slight nod that seemed to acknowledge my presence in a way Victoria hadn't. As guests mingled during the transition to the reception, I helped Lily change from her flower girl dress into a more comfortable party dress for the evening. When we returned to the cocktail hour, Victoria was surrounded by admirers, my mother hovering nearby like a sentinel. Nathan, however, broke away from a conversation to approach us. "The perfect flower girl," he said, bending slightly to address Lily. "You did such a great job. Those were the most evenly spaced petals I've ever seen." Lily beamed at him. "I practiced a lot. Mommy helped me." Nathan turned his attention to me. "She's wonderful, Olivia. You must be very proud." "I am," I acknowledged, surprised by his genuine interest. "Thank you for being so kind to her." "It's easy to be kind to kind people," he replied with a smile. "I'm glad you both could be here today. Family is important to me." Before our conversation could continue, Victoria appeared at his side, her hand sliding possessively through his arm. "Darling, my father's college roommate is looking for you. He's interested in discussing potential investment opportunities." Her eyes flicked briefly to me. "I see you've been chatting with Olivia." Just thanking her and Lily for being part of our day, Nathan replied easily. Victoria's lips tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, we shouldn't keep Wallace waiting. He's quite an important contact." She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The seating chart is posted by the entrance to the ballroom, Olivia. I'm sure you'll find your table easily." As they walked away, I heard her murmur something to Nathan that made him glance back at me with a slight frown. The reception was held in the hotel's grand ballroom, transformed with the same white and blush floral theme as the ceremony. I checked the seating chart and found that Lily and I had been placed at table 19, near the back of the room with some distant relatives from my father's side whom I barely knew. "Is this where we sit for dinner, Mommy?" Lily asked, looking around at the elegant table settings. "Yes, honey. We'll get to know Grandpa's cousins better," I said, trying to keep my tone positive despite the obvious slight of being seated so far from the main wedding party. The cocktail hour conversations were a mixture of pity and judgment from various family members and friends. Most began with observations about how grown-up Lily looked before inevitably turning to my situation. "You're managing all right on your own?" my father's cousin Marge asked, her voice heavy with concern that bordered on condescension. "More than all right," I assured her. "My design business is doing well, and Lily's thriving at her school." "That's good, dear. It must be so difficult without a partner." "I don't know how you do it," she replied, clearly unable to imagine a fulfilling life within my circumstances. When the DJ announced it was time for the first dance, guests gathered around the dance floor to watch Nathan and Victoria sway to an Ed Sheeran ballad. They made a striking couple, Victoria's dark hair and pale skin contrasting with Nathan's tall, broader frame. After their dance, the father-daughter dance followed, with my father looking uncharacteristically emotional as he guided Victoria around the floor. The dance floor then opened to all guests. I remained at our table, watching as various couples and groups moved to the upbeat music. Lily bounced in her seat, clearly wanting to join in. "Can we dance, Mommy?" she asked, eyes bright with excitement. "Of course we can," I said, pushing aside my self-consciousness. For Lily, I would brave the dance floor and the eyes of judgmental relatives. We had been dancing for just a few minutes, Lily giggling as I twirled her, when Nathan approached us. He had removed his formal jacket and loosened his tie slightly, looking more relaxed than he had all day. "May I have a dance with the flower girl?" he asked with a formal bow that made Lily giggle harder. "Yes, please," Lily replied before I could answer. Nathan proved to be surprisingly good with children, adapting his dance moves to Lily's height and occasionally lifting her for a spin that elicited peals of laughter. Their interaction drew smiles from nearby guests, and I noticed several people watching the charming scene of the groom dancing with the young flower girl. The moment was short-lived, however. Victoria, who had been across the room talking with her college friends, materialized at Nathan's side, her expression tight. "Nathan, my grandparents want photos with us by the cake before they leave early," she said, her hand once again claiming his arm. Her eyes barely acknowledged Lily or me. "They've had such a long day already." "Of course," Nathan nodded, then turned to Lily. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Lily. Maybe we can have another one later." "Okay, Uncle Nathan," Lily replied, the familial term slipping out naturally. Victoria's expression flickered at the casual address, but she merely tugged Nathan away, leaving us on the dance floor. As they walked away, I could see her speaking intently to him, her posture rigid with displeasure. Lily continued to be the unexpected star of the dance portion of the evening, her uninhibited joy and sweet dance moves charming many of the guests. Several of Victoria's friends commented on how adorable she was, and even some of Nathan's family members came over to introduce themselves to us. This positive attention did not go unnoticed by Victoria, whose gaze repeatedly found us on the dance floor, her expression growing increasingly pinched. During a brief lull when Lily and I took a break for some water, I overheard Victoria speaking to my mother near the dessert table. "She's letting Lily run wild," Victoria muttered. "The child is drawing attention away from where it should be focused." "You know how children are at weddings," my mother replied. "Though Olivia could certainly exercise more control. I'll have a word with her." True to her word, Eleanor approached our table minutes later, her smile fixed in place for the benefit of anyone watching. "Lily dear, why don't you come with Grandma to the bridal suite? The other children are watching a movie there with a sitter and there's ice cream," she said, though I hadn't seen any other children being directed away from the reception. Lily looked at me questioningly. "Can I, Mommy?" Caught between not wanting to disappoint Lily and suspecting my mother's motives, I hesitated. "Are there really other children there?" "The Henderson's twins and Nathan's little nephew," my mother replied smoothly. "Much more appropriate company for Lily than a room full of adults, don't you think?" Rather than create a scene, I nodded. "Okay, but please bring her back in a little while. She shouldn't miss the whole reception." As my mother led Lily away, I had the distinct feeling that I'd just been outmaneuvered, left alone at a table of strangers while my daughter was effectively removed from the celebration. The worst was yet to come, however, as the evening progressed toward the traditional speeches and toasts. The reception dinner service began promptly at 7, an elaborate four-course meal featuring the kind of gourmet cuisine Victoria had always preferred. At our distant table, conversation was minimal, limited to polite comments about the food and venue. I found myself checking my watch repeatedly, wondering when my mother would return with Lily. After the main course was cleared, the best man, Nathan's brother Ethan, tapped his knife against his champagne flute, signaling the beginning of the speeches. My father went first, rising from his seat at the head table with a sheet of paper in hand. When Victoria was just 6 years old, he began. She announced at the dinner table that she would only marry a prince. Appreciative laughter rippled through the room. Today, she may not have found royalty, but she has certainly found her equal in Nathan, accomplished, intelligent, and kind. My father continued with anecdotes about Victoria's determination and success throughout her life, occasionally acknowledging my existence with phrases like, both my daughters or my children. These brief inclusions felt like afterthoughts rather than genuine attempts to represent our family completely. Victoria has always known exactly what she wanted and exactly how to achieve it, he concluded. Nathan, you're getting not just a beautiful bride, but a woman who will ensure your life together is nothing short of extraordinary. To Victoria and Nathan, glasses raised around the room as applause followed his toast. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, while Victoria beamed at our father with genuine appreciation. The best man's speech came next, a heartfelt tribute to his brother and new sister-in-law that balanced humor with sincerity. Ethan told stories of growing up with Nathan, his brother's academic and business successes, and how he'd never seen Nathan as happy as when he met Victoria. To watch my serious older brother become completely smitten was something of a miracle, Ethan joked. Victoria, whatever spell you cast, I'm grateful for it. You've brought out the best in him. More applause, more raised glasses. I joined in, genuinely touched by the obvious bond between the brothers. Then came the moment I hadn't anticipated. Victoria stood and took the microphone from Ethan, smoothing her dress as she faced the assembled guests. I know it's not traditional for the bride to make a speech, she began with a self-deprecating smile, but when have I ever been traditional? Knowing chuckles from those familiar with Victoria's strong-willed nature. I want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate with Nathan and me. Your presence means the world to us. She proceeded with standard expressions of gratitude to her parents, the wedding party, and Nathan's family for welcoming her so warmly. Just as I began to relax, thinking the speeches would conclude without incident, Victoria's tone shifted subtly. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge my sister, Olivia, she said, gesturing toward my table at the back. Heads turned, and I felt a flush rise to my cheeks at the sudden attention. Olivia has always chosen a different path than mine. While I focused on my career and finding the right partner, my sister is a single mother, raising her daughter, Lily, alone. A strange hush fell over the room. This didn't feel like an acknowledgement, so much as a spotlight I hadn't asked for. Victoria continued, her smile tightening. It can't be easy being unwanted by anyone, having to manage everything by yourself. But Olivia perseveres, doesn't she? Let's give her a round of applause for doing her best despite her circumstances. The words hit me like physical blows. Unwanted by anyone. A few uncomfortable laughs broke out, followed by scattered, uncertain applause. I sat frozen, unable to process that my sister had just publicly humiliated me at her wedding. But Victoria wasn't finished. Nathan and I feel so fortunate to have found each other and built our relationship on mutual respect and good choices. Not everyone is so lucky in love, are they, Olivia? More nervous laughter, louder this time. My face burned with humiliation as I stared down at my plate, willing myself not to cry, not to run, not to give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing me break. From somewhere to my left, my mother's voice rang out clearly. That's what happens when you don't value yourself enough, Victoria. Men can tell when a woman is a used product. A used product. The phrase hung in the air, followed by more laughter, some shocked, some genuinely amused at my expense. I looked up to see my mother smiling as if she'd made a slightly risque joke at a dinner party rather than publicly degraded her own daughter. At that moment, Lily returned to our table, escorted by one of the catering staff rather than my mother. "Mommy, why is everyone looking at you?" she asked innocently. "Why are they laughing?" Her question, audible in the momentary lull, elicited a few sympathetic glances, but mostly more uncomfortable tittering. Victoria smirked at the microphone, clearly pleased with the scene she'd created. The combination of my public humiliation and Lily's confusion ignited something primal within me. I could endure Victoria's cruelty toward me. I had for years, but I would not allow my daughter to witness her mother being treated as an object of ridicule and pity. With shaking hands, I reached for my purse and Lily's small cardigan. "Come on, sweetie," I whispered. "I think it's time for us to go home." "But what about the cake?" Lily asked, her voice quavering slightly as she sensed my distress. "We'll get our own cake tomorrow," I promised, tears now streaming freely down my face despite my best efforts to contain them. A whole cake just for us. As I stood to leave, gathering what remained of my dignity, an unexpected movement at the head table caught everyone's attention. Nathan had risen abruptly from his seat, his expression unreadable as he reached for the microphone still clutched in Victoria's hand. The reception hall fell silent as Nathan took the microphone from Victoria, who looked up at him with confusion that quickly morphed into alarm. His face, previously warm and joyful throughout the day, had hardened into something grave and determined. The sudden tension was palpable, freezing me in place as I stood with Lily's hand in mine. "I think," Nathan said, his voice measured but carrying clearly across the hushed room, "that we need to take a moment here." Victoria tugged at his sleeve. "Nathan, what are you doing? We should cut the cake now." He gently but firmly shook off her hand and turned to address the assembled guests. "I want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate what should be a joyous occasion. Weddings are meant to bring families together, to strengthen bonds, not to tear people down." The silence deepened as guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, suddenly very interested in their dessert plates or centerpieces. Victoria's face had gone pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What I just witnessed," Nathan continued, his gaze moving deliberately across the room, "was not a joke or gentle teasing. It was cruel and deliberate humiliation of someone who deserves nothing but respect." He turned slightly to look directly at me, still standing with my purse clutched in one hand and Lily's small fingers wrapped around the other. "Olivia, I've only just met you today, but what I've observed speaks volumes about your character. You arrived early to help, though you weren't included in the bridal party. You've handled every slight and dismissal with grace. And most importantly, you've raised a daughter who is kind, well-mannered, and absolutely delightful." Stunned by this unexpected defense, I felt fresh tears spring to my eyes, not of humiliation this time, but of validation. Beside me, Lily squeezed my hand, looking up with confusion but also pride that someone was saying nice things about her mom. Nathan turned back to the head table, where Victoria sat rigid with shock and growing anger. Being a single parent isn't a failure or a joke. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world, done without relief or recognition. My own mother raised me and my brother alone after our father died when I was 11. At this revelation, I glanced toward Barbara, Nathan's mother, who was watching her son with unmistakable pride in her eyes. So many things suddenly made sense. Her kindness to me, Nathan's easy rapport with Lily, his genuine interest in our well-being. "What makes a family isn't adherence to some arbitrary traditional structure," Nathan continued, his voice growing stronger. "It's love, support, and respect, qualities I've seen Olivia demonstrate today despite receiving very little in return." My mother stood up then, her face flushed. "Nathan, dear, you don't understand our family dynamics. Victoria was just having a bit of fun. Olivia knows we tease because we care." "With all due respect, Eleanor," Nathan replied, his tone indicating very little respect indeed, "what I heard wasn't teasing. Calling your daughter a used product isn't caring, it's shameful. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the reception hall. My mother sank back into her seat, her expression a mixture of indignation and embarrassment at being called out so publicly. Victoria stood again, grabbing at Nathan's arm. "That's enough," she hissed, loudly enough for the microphone to catch. "You're ruining our wedding." "No, Victoria," he replied, lowering the microphone slightly. "What's ruining our wedding is the revelation that the woman I married thinks it's acceptable to publicly mock her sister for being a single mother. That the family I just joined believes it's appropriate to shame someone for circumstances largely beyond their control." He raised the microphone again. "I need to apologize to you, Olivia. I'm sorry that your sister chose our wedding as an opportunity to hurt you. I'm sorry that I didn't know enough about your family dynamics to anticipate and prevent this. And I'm deeply sorry if my silence until now made you think I condone this behavior in any way." Victoria yanked the microphone from his hand, her composure completely shattered. "How dare you embarrass me like this? This is my wedding." "It's our wedding," Nathan corrected quietly but firmly, "and I won't start our marriage by silently witnessing cruelty." With that, Victoria threw the microphone down on the table with a loud feedback squeal and stormed out of the reception hall, my mother hurrying after her with a venomous glare in my direction, as if I had somehow orchestrated this turn of events. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, surprisingly, Nathan's father stood and raised his glass. "To courage and kindness," he said simply. Several guests, including Nathan's brother and friends, immediately raised their glasses in response. Nathan stepped away from the head table and walked directly to where Lily and I stood, still frozen in disbelief. "Please don't leave," he said quietly, "for our ears only. Don't let them drive you away from a celebration you have every right to be part of." "I don't want to cause any more drama," I whispered, acutely aware of the eyes on us. "You didn't cause this," he insisted.
"Please stay.
For Lily's sake, if nothing else. She deserves to have cake at her aunt's wedding." At the mention of cake, Lily's face brightened slightly. "Can we stay for just the cake, Mommy?" she asked, the simple request of a child who didn't fully understand the adult complexities swirling around her. Looking down at her hopeful expression, I made my decision. "Yes, we can stay for cake." As if on cue, the wedding coordinator, who had been hovering anxiously nearby, approached the DJ. Music suddenly filled the room, breaking the tension as the coordinator announced that the cake cutting would commence shortly, followed by dancing. Gradually, guests returned to their conversations, though many now approached our table to introduce themselves or offer kind words. Nathan's groomsmen made a point of coming over to chat with Lily about her flower girl duties. Barbara appeared with a plate of appetizers she'd noticed Lily hadn't gotten to try during the cocktail hour. "My son has always had excellent judgment about people," she said quietly to me as Lily examined the selection of fancy hors d'oeuvres. "It's one of his best qualities as a businessman and as a person." "He didn't have to do that," I said, still processing what had happened. "He's just made his own wedding incredibly awkward." Barbara smiled, the expression transforming her elegant features into something warmer and more accessible. "Nathan has never been one to value comfort over conscience. It's why his father and I are so proud of him." She patted my hand. "Victoria will either grow from this, or she won't. But either way, you've gained an ally in our family." Victoria eventually returned for the cake cutting, her makeup freshly applied, but her eyes still bright with fury. She performed the traditional ceremony with Nathan with mechanical precision, their fingers jointly holding the knife as cameras flashed. The moment the pictures were complete, she retreated to a table with her bridesmaids, pointedly avoiding both Nathan and me. As promised, Lily got her cake, her earlier distress forgotten as she concentrated on savoring every bite of the elaborate confection. The evening proceeded with dancing and celebrations, the awkwardness gradually dissipating as the open bar did its work on the guests. Later, as Lily finally began to fade and I prepared to take her home, Nathan approached us once more. "Thank you for staying," he said, genuine gratitude in his voice. "It meant a lot to me." "I should be thanking you," I replied, my voice thick with emotion I was still trying to process. No one has ever stood up for me like that. Then they've all failed you, he said simply. I meant every word, Olivia. What you're doing as a single mother is remarkable, not something to be mocked or pitted. As we said our goodbyes, I realized that something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in years, I had walked into a family event expecting only judgment and criticism, but was leaving with something entirely unexpected: respect, and perhaps even the beginning of genuine family connection, just not from the quarters I had always sought it from. The morning after Victoria's wedding, I awoke to find Lily already up, carefully arranging her flower girl memento, a small crystal flower Victoria's wedding planner had given to her, on her bookshelf. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind, still seeming somewhat surreal in the light of day. Did you have fun at the wedding, sweetie? I asked, helping her straighten the crystal so it caught the morning light. I liked dancing with Uncle Nathan, she replied thoughtfully. And the cake was really good. But why were people laughing at you, Mommy? Did you do something funny? The innocent question pierced my heart.
No, honey.
Sometimes grown-ups laugh when they shouldn't. It wasn't very nice. Uncle Nathan didn't think it was funny, Lily observed with the simple clarity of a child. He looked mad. He was standing up for us, I explained, searching for words a 5-year-old could understand. Sometimes people say unkind things and other people need to remind them to be nice. Lily nodded sagely. Like when Miss Jenkins tells Tommy not to make fun of Zoe's glasses at school. Exactly like that, I agreed, marveling at how easily children grasped concepts of fairness and kindness that adults so often complicated. My phone rang while we were eating breakfast. The screen showed an unfamiliar number, and I answered cautiously. Olivia? It's Nathan. I hope I'm not calling too early. Surprised, I assured him it was fine. We're early risers in this house. Is everything okay? I just wanted to check on you, he said, his voice warm but concerned. Last night was intense. I know Victoria said some horrible things. We're fine, I said automatically, my default response to inquiries about my well-being. Then, reconsidering, I added more honestly, actually, it was pretty awful. But what you did meant a lot to me. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency, Nathan replied. Listen, Victoria and I are heading to our honeymoon this afternoon, but I want you to know that what happened last night doesn't change my hope that you and Lily will be part of our lives. Your family. The simple declaration, your family, spoken without qualification or condition, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. That means more than you know, I managed to say. Throughout the day, my phone buzzed repeatedly with messages and calls from family members who had witnessed the wedding drama. My cousin Jessica, who I'd barely spoken to at the reception, texted, "What Victoria did was terrible. I should have said something. I'm sorry." Uncle Robert, who had made the insensitive comment about Michael earlier, left a voicemail. "Olivia, it's your uncle. Just wanted to say, I admire how you handled yourself last night. Call me if you ever need anything." I mean it. Even my father called, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Your sister was out of line, he said, the closest he'd ever come to criticizing Victoria. Your mother, too. I should have stepped in.
I'm sorry, Olivia.
These apologies, while appreciated, also highlighted how many people had witnessed my humiliation without intervening until Nathan broke the silence. It was a bittersweet realization, validation that the treatment had been wrong, coupled with disappointment that it had taken an outsider to name the dysfunction. 3 days after the wedding, as I was putting the finishing touches on a logo design for client, my phone displayed Victoria's name. I stared at it for several rings, debating whether to answer. Finally, knowing this conversation was inevitable, I accepted the call. Olivia. Victoria's voice was clipped, formal. We need to talk about what happened. Yes, we do. I agreed, keeping my tone neutral. Nathan had no right to embarrass me like that at my wedding, she began, immediately on the offensive. He completely overreacted to a little joke. It wasn't a joke, Victoria, I said quietly but firmly. You deliberately humiliated me in front of everyone we know. You called me unwanted. Mom called me a used product. How exactly is that funny? You're being oversensitive. We tease each other. That's what families do.
No, Victoria.
Teasing is affectionate. What you did was cruel, and you know it. There was a long pause. I could almost hear Victoria weighing her options, realizing that her usual tactics of dismissal and gaslighting weren't going to work this time. Nathan is insisting I apologize, she finally said, her tone suggesting this was an unreasonable demand. He's threatening to cancel our trip to Bali if I don't make things right with you. I don't want a forced apology, Victoria. What I want is for you to understand why what you did was wrong. Another silence, longer this time. When Victoria spoke again, her voice had lost some of its defensive edge. I didn't think about how it would sound to everyone else. I was annoyed that Nathan kept paying attention to Lily and you. This glimpse of honesty, however self-centered, was more than I'd expected. Why does that bother you so much? Lily is your niece. I'm your sister. Why is Nathan being kind to us a problem? Because it's my day. Victoria snapped, then immediately moderated her tone. It was supposed to be about me, and suddenly everyone was cooing over Lily, and Nathan was defending you, and I just wanted everyone focused on me and my perfect day. The childlike honesty of this admission was so quintessentially Victoria that I almost laughed, despite everything. Victoria, we weren't trying to steal your spotlight. We were just existing in the space you invited us into. I know, she admitted reluctantly. Nathan said the same thing. He said I was insecure. Coming from Victoria, who had always projected unshakable confidence, this was a startling concession. Maybe we both have insecurities, I offered. But publicly humiliating each other isn't how sisters should handle that.
Fine.
I'm sorry for what I said. It was inappropriate. Not the most heartfelt apology, but from Victoria, it was significant progress. Thank you. I accept your apology. Mother isn't going to apologize, Victoria warned. She thinks Nathan was completely out of line. I didn't expect she would. I replied, long accustomed to my mother's inability to acknowledge wrongdoing. But it doesn't change that what she said was cruel and untrue. Nathan wants us all to have dinner when we get back from our honeymoon, Victoria said, changing the subject. He thinks we need to clear the air as a family. I'd be willing to try that, I agreed cautiously. After we hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about our conversation. Victoria's apology, however grudging, represented a shift in our dynamic. For perhaps the first time, she had been held accountable for her treatment of me and had been forced to acknowledge, however reluctantly, that it was wrong. 1 month after the wedding, the promised family dinner took place at an upscale restaurant Nathan had selected. The atmosphere was tense initially, with my mother maintaining a frosty civility while my father attempted strained small talk. Victoria was subdued, still adjusting to Nathan's unexpected championing of her sister. Nathan, however, was warmly engaging, asking thoughtful questions about my design work and Lily's kindergarten adventures. He showed genuine interest in my responses, creating space for me in the conversation that had always been denied before. As the meal progressed, Victoria gradually joined in more naturally, even sharing an anecdote about a childhood memory that painted me in a positive light, something so rare that I nearly choked on my water. Remember when Olivia stood up to Mrs. Grayson in 4th grade? Victoria said, surprising everyone. The teacher accused me of cheating on that math test, and Olivia was the one who marched up and told her I wouldn't need to cheat because I was already too smart. I'd forgotten about that, I admitted, touched that she had remembered this moment of sisterly solidarity. You got detention for a week, Victoria recalled with the ghost of a smile. For disrespecting authority. Worth it, I said, returning her smile tentatively. My mother watched this exchange with thinly veiled disapproval but refrained from making cutting remarks. Her control over the family narrative was visibly slipping, and she seemed unsure how to reassert it in the face of Nathan's clear unwillingness to participate in the dynamics she had established. Over the following months, a new pattern gradually emerged. Nathan became a genuine ally and friend, occasionally calling just to check in or inviting Lily and me to Sunday brunches. Victoria, influenced by his example and perhaps reconsidering some of her own behaviors, made efforts to be more inclusive and less competitive. Lily developed a special bond with her Uncle Nathan, who took a sincere interest in her artwork and storytelling. Their relationship gave her something she had lacked, a positive male presence who valued her unconditionally. Most surprisingly, Victoria herself began to show signs of growth. During a shopping trip 6 months after the wedding, one I had agreed to with considerable trepidation, she actually asked my opinion on a business outfit she was considering. "You have a good eye for design," she acknowledged. "And you always manage to look put together, even with, everything you're juggling." From Victoria, this was extraordinary praise. "Thank you," I said simply, recognizing her effort to bridge the gap between us. "Nathan says I need to work on my competitiveness," she admitted as we browsed a display of silk scarves. "He thinks I've been competing with you our whole lives, which is ridiculous because we want completely different things." I raised an eyebrow, amused by her partial insight. "Do we?" Victoria considered this, perhaps for the first time. "I guess we both want to be valued," she said slowly. "I just always thought there was only so much, approval to go around." "It's not a finite resource," I pointed out gently. "We can both be appreciated for who we are." This conversation marked a turning point in our relationship, not a miraculous transformation into best friends, but the beginning of mutual respect that had never existed before. My newfound confidence extended beyond family relationships. At a gallery showing featuring some of my design work, I met Adam, a kind and thoughtful architect who asked thoughtful questions about my creative process. When he suggested coffee sometime, I surprised myself by accepting without the usual self-doubt that had plagued my post-Michael dating attempts. On our third date, when the topic of Lily inevitably arose, Adam's response was refreshingly different from other men I'd briefly dated. "I'd love to meet her when you're ready for that," he said. "She sounds like an amazing kid." "She is," I agreed. "But I need you to understand that she's my priority. We're a package deal." "I wouldn't want it any other way," Adam replied with a warmth that suggested he meant it. As I reflect on the journey from Victoria's wedding to where I am now, I'm struck by how a single moment of public humiliation, followed by an unexpected defense, set in motion changes I could never have anticipated. Nathan's willingness to speak truth to cruelty created ripples that continued to spread, affecting relationships I had assumed were permanently fixed in unhealthy patterns. The most profound change, however, has been within myself. I no longer measure my worth by my family's approval or view my status as a single mother as something to apologize for. Michael's abandonment and my family's judgment were never reflections of my value. They were reflections of their limitations. Every day, I watch Lily grow more confident, more creative, more compassionate, and I know that regardless of the circumstances that brought us here, we are exactly where we're meant to be. What's your experience with family dynamics? Have you ever witnessed someone standing up against cruelty at an important event? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships, personal growth, and finding strength in unexpected places. And if you know someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' judgment, please share this with them. Thank you for being here with me today, and remember, sometimes the family we need isn't always the one we're born into, but the one we find along the way.